The Path of Exile campaign has been a rather hot topic in the Path of Exile community for many years now. And so this video is going to be for veteran players. If you're new to the game, let's say you played Diablo 4, you liked the premise of Diablo 4, you wanted a different ARPG, you started playing Path of Exile, you like Path of Exile, you're going through the game, you're having a great time. This video isn't for you. This video is for people who have been playing Path of Exile for years, like myself. If you go through the backlog of my channel, you'll find a lot of my earlier videos are about Diablo 3, Path of Exile, Last Epic. I am an ARPG enjoyer, and I have been playing Path of Exile on and off for years. And the way I've played it is I've played it very casually, where I would play a league, I would get halfway through the campaign, I'd put it down till the next league, I'd play it again, get, 3/4 through the campaign, until suddenly, one day, in Crucible, Kitava, the great PoE demon, possessed me. And he said, Glavian, this time, we're finishing it all the way through. And I said, okay. So in Crucible, I picked up Toxic Rain Raider, and I went through the campaign, beat it. I got to white maps, beat them. Yellow maps, beat them. Red maps, beat them. Tier 16, Searing Exarch. I was having a great time. I was blasting. And I was having such a great time that I thought to myself, Glavian, hold up. This is so fun for you. Do you want this to stop? Do you want to burn out on this experience? No, you don't. Of course you don't. So why don't you take a break? Why don't you wait until Toda comes out, the next league? Because if you keep playing now and you keep playing through Toda, you might burn out. You don't want to burn out. You love this game. So why don't you just put it down for a second, pick it up next league? So that's exactly what I do. I put down my Toxic Rain Raider in Crucible. I wait till Toda comes out. I'm excited. Finally, the new league is out. I make a Righteous Fire Juggernaut. I am blasting. I am doing way better during this campaign than I did with my Toxic Rain Raider in Crucible. And I'm just blasting through everything. And it's the best league start I've ever had because I've learned so much in my experience going through the game, beating the campaign, getting to maps, beating some of the pinnacle bosses. And so I'm much more experienced at the game now than I ever was before. Therefore, my league starter was a lot stronger than ever before. And something weird happened around Act 6 or Act 7, where I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Am I really enjoying it this time around? And upon introspection, I found the answer to be no. So I wondered to myself, why? Why could that be the case? You love this game so much. This is the only game you've ever spent microtransactions on. You love Path of Exile. Why is it all of a sudden, now that you're more experienced than ever before, now that you're better at the game than ever before, that you are finding the campaign to be a slog? And I figured out that there are two reasons why that's the case. Now, the first reason is because I've already beaten the campaign. Once you beat a game once, you know that you can beat it. And knowing whether or not you could beat it is half of the fun of going through a game. It's that anticipation of, am I skilled enough to do this? And once you've done it once, that anticipation is gone. Now, the second problem with the campaign is a lot of the things that keep endgame exciting are not present in the campaign. For example, when you are running maps in endgame, you have a limited number of tries on a given map before you brick your map. If you brick your map, then you have to put in a new one. So there's some risk there. You lose experience if you die in endgame, right? So there are risks. There are real risks that add to that excitement at endgame that don't exist in the campaign. In the campaign, let's say you're in Act 1. You get to Mervil, the Act 1 boss. You're fighting her. You get her down to 20%. She kills you. You can go right back into her room. She's still sitting there at 20%, and you could just finish her off. You lose nothing for dying during the campaign. The worst that you lose is having to respawn at the waypoint and walk back, which takes about 10 seconds. So there's no risk here. That keeps it exciting. Also, it's very linear. When you're in endgame in PoE, there are 1,000 things you could do. You could do delve, you could do whatever mechanic you want, you could map however you want, you could farm currency if you want to, or you could try to do bossing. The game opens up, right? And it gives you that choice, it gives you options that don't exist while you're going through the campaign. In the campaign, you're just doing a bunch of fetch quests over and over again. And so, one common way that people respond to this is they'll say, well, if you want more excitement, then why don't you just play hardcore? And the problem with hardcore in Path of Exile is if you're not a hardcore player, if you're not someone who has thousands of hours in Path of Exile, if you're not someone who's been playing it for years, you're going to be dying during the campaign hardcore in Path of Exile. And all this does is add to that repetition of the campaign. Let's say you go through the campaign hardcore, you die at Act 4. You're going to have to go through those acts again, 1 through 4. And then you get through and then you die in Act 5. Now you're going to go through 1 to 5 again. So it makes this repetitive, linear experience just something you're going to have to go through more and more and more and more and more. Right? It's going to burn you out on the campaign faster if you're not someone who's going to be able to clear the campaign with any real probability. So that's the first problem with hardcore. Now, something else that some people might say is, well, why don't you just make your own build then? And with making your own build, you run into the same problem you have with hardcore, where you might get to Act 4 or Act 5, and you might get bricked. You might hit a wall. And because you don't get regret orbs, especially if it's your league starter, during the campaign, you're going to have to rebuild your character again. There is no option for you to respec without orbs for free during the campaign as it stands. And so you're going to have to be running through characters again and again and again. The speed at which you learn from your mistakes becomes so much slower because you can't just respec on the fly during the campaign. Now, I'm not saying this is something that should happen at endgame, because at endgame you do have access to orbs of regret because you're farming currency better. But in the early game, you don't really get to do that. You don't really get to respec. It's very punishing. And so you don't have the opportunity to really sit there as a mid-core player, as a casual player, and try to make your own build and learn from those mistakes because the space between mistakes is so spread out. All right, so then what about solo self-found? Why not just play solo self-found then? And the reason I love Path of Exile more than I love Diablo 3, Diablo 4, there's a lot of reasons. But the primary reason is because playing Trade League in Path of Exile is a very social experience. I am an MMO enjoyer. I am an ARPG enjoyer. And I've made friends in Trade League and Path of Exile. Literal friends. I know their names. I know what they look like. We talk. It's great. And I made those friends trading in Trade League and Path of Exile. Solo self-found makes the game so much more of a solo experience. And that's not why I play Path of Exile. I play Path of Exile because I like the social experience. So that's the problem with trying to use solo self-found to freshen up the experience. And so what's the solution to these problems? Well, one thing you could do is you could make it so you have access to maps right at the beginning once you've gone through the campaign once. I think everyone should go through the campaign at least once because it's fine the first time through. It's fun. Once you've beaten the campaign, why not make it so maps, in the same way the hideout is available once you've unlocked the hideout once, why not do the same thing for maps? Now, of course, you're not going to be able to go ahead and run maps until you get to level 60, 65, 70. However, now you have the freedom to level up in something like Endless Delve. Make Endless Delve the leveling experience, because the way that the campaign is now, the only way you can try to squeeze out performance and optimization through the campaign is by speedrunning it. Speedrunning it, in my opinion, is not my favorite type of gameplay. Something like Endless Delve makes it so I can push my limits, see how far I could get in Delve, and get rewarded with XP per hour the further I get through Delve. I get rewarded with XP per hour by trying to optimize my gear while leveling. This would be a fun experience. And GGG wouldn't even have to add anything new into the game. So Endless Delve is one way they could do this. Another way they could keep the leveling experience more fresh while maintaining the campaign is by making it so you can get free respecs during the campaign, which I've touched on. Because this way I could go in and I could experiment with making my own builds, and I could see what works. And if I hit a wall, I just move my build around a little bit. And it's not like it's a completely casual experience because, well, your new build, your changes are going to scale or not scale with the gear you have on. So you're going to have to find new gear. So there's still that punishment in having to find new gear by changing your talent tree, your build, while leveling. So that's one way they could go about it. Now, a third way, which I wouldn't prefer as much, is GGG can make it so you lose experience while leveling in the same way that you lose experience in the end game. Now, is this my preferred method? No, but it does add some punishment similar to hardcore without it being the hardcore experience itself, which I said and I think is for primarily veteran players who can get through the campaign without dying, which isn't a lot of midcore players. And so to kind of wrap up this video, the last thing I want to say is that PoE players, Diablo 4 players, Last Epic players, Diablo 3 players, while all of them might have different main games, what all of them have in common is there is a general consensus that adventure mode in Diablo 3 is a positive for that game. So why not add something similar to Path of Exile?